My name is Aaron. You guys got to share your favorite childhood movie. I'm going to share one of mine, and mine was more of like a series of movies that I loved, and I share this love for this movie with my nephew, Ketis. He is obsessed with the Toy Story movies. Was that anybody else's favorite in the room? All right. So I loved these movies as a kid, and I think Ketis has probably seen that movie, over 100 times, and he's 2. So this movie is great. The one I want to talk about today, though, introduces this character right here. Anybody know who this is? It's Jesse, right. So for those that have not seen this movie, I'm going to spoil it for you. If you haven't seen it, that's your fault, not mine, okay? So what happens is early on in the movie, Woody actually gets broken. He's ripped open, and he has this fear that Andy's not going to want him anymore. Well, he ends up getting captured or stolen and taken by this toy collector who finds out that he's really, really valuable. And in the meantime, he meets Jesse, who was a part of an old TV show called Woody's Roundup, and they find out that they are highly collectible and that they were worth a lot of money. So Jesse, you kind of get to hear some of her backstory and how she also one time had a kid that played with her and that loved her. And I don't know if y'all remember the saddest song in the world in that movie? If somebody loved me, everything was beautiful. Anybody? Anyway, so they played that. They played that. You learn about her backstory, and she was forgotten and given away, and left. I guess they can't really die. I guess decay away. Anyway, so this leaves her emotionally scarred. She is high energy, spunky, all of those things, but she has these emotional wounds. There's this tension that Woody also has there. The tension is Woody is saying that children's love is worth the risk of opening yourself up to that pain again. And Woody's temptation is to go spend his life in a museum. There's no risk, there's no pain, but he also will not get to experience any love, right? So he finally gets a new interpretation of his events as he was ripped and as he was repaired. And there's a line in the movie. It says, "I can't stop Andy from growing up, but," anybody know it? "I wouldn't miss it for the world," right? So this actually inspires Jessie to do the same. And Woody's choice gives her hope, and it's all happy endings, right? It's all good from there. It's crazy. Some of these favorite movies, they mean so much to us because they start pulling at heartstrings of real events that happen in our lives, right? So these childhood movies, next thing you know, I don't know if y'all saw the third or the fourth one, but man, I had something in my eye there towards the end of those ones when they were riding the conveyor belt into the furnace. Yeah. So the tie-in is, this you start seeing these two characters, and maybe like Jesse, you also carry some silent wounds. We bury our past pain and betrayal, thinking that, man, if we don't talk about it, if we just kind of push that on the back burner, it'll just go away, right? Or maybe you're like Woody, and you're hiding from the risk of being hurt again. Maybe you were hurt in the past, and you're just hiding. But you see, just like Woody, a situation arises and you get pressure. He gets captured and he gets taken, and this pressure starts bringing things to the surface, right? So the key to this is God does not expose our past to shame us. He brings it to the surface to heal us. And we're going to get ready to dive in as you guys are turning to Genesis 42, which is where we're going to start. I'm going to have you flip over to 45 here in just a little bit. We're going to see two groups of people emerge as well. We're going to dive back into Joseph and see where you are. So as you guys turn in, we've been doing this, previously in the life of Joseph thing. This is the finale. This is the culmination of everything that we've been talking about over the past several weeks. So we're just going to jump through real quick. This has been 20 years in the making. 20 years of silence, guilt, and hope, right? So I don't want to just stand up here and hear myself talk the whole time, so I'm going to need some engagement. What's going to happen is I'm going to read this first one, and I'm going to point at you, and y'all are going to read the blue. Anytime you see blue words come up, I want you guys to read those back to me. So, recap on the story of Joseph. Joseph, he was born to Jacob. he was kind of a favorite son, right? He was given this coat of many colors, and his brothers hated him, and they sold him into slavery, but God was with him. That's right. So he then was sold into slavery, was taken to Potiphar's house, where God was with him, and he had favor. But something happened. Potiphar's wife thought he was good looking. And so he was accused of sexual immorality, but God was with him. That's right, God was with him. So he was thrown into prison for something that he didn't even do. He was sitting there in prison, but God was with him. That's right, God was with him. So next, he interpreted some dreams. He met some other characters, a bread maker and a cupbearer, and they were supposed to go tell Pharaoh that he was wrongly accused and remember him, and right? But he was forgotten in prison, but that's right, God was with him. Finally, after a couple years in prison, he was brought to Pharaoh's palace where he started interpreting dreams. This is where we were last week, and when he was in Pharaoh's palace. That's right. And so through his influence, because God had favor in his life, last one where we left off, he was established as the governor of Egypt, second most powerful man in Egypt. And that's where we're going to pick up, but we're going to rewind just a hair, and we're going to talk about the brothers, right? We've been following Joseph through the week, but what have the brothers been up to? We're going to dive in today here in Genesis 42:1. Now, I want to give a little caveat. We're covering 3 to 4 chapters of Scripture today. And listen, I know there's a lot going on in all of this. And we just don't have time to do it all today. So I encourage you guys, take 40 minutes and go and read this for yourselves. Because there's some things in there that are key to the story that we just don't have time to unpack here today together. So you guys, we're gonna move quick. I need y'all to buckle up and stay with me. The scriptures are gonna be up here on the screen. I'm gonna kind of move through them pretty quickly, okay? So here we are. There's Jacob, and there's the 11 brothers, and famine, just like Joseph predicted, is all across the land, and it finally reaches the land of Canaan, where Jacob and the brothers are living. And so here's Jacob. He's an old man. He's got his brothers. They're hungry. Famine's there, and he hears this word, and he says, "Man, I heard that there was some grain for sale in Egypt." And the brothers were like, "Egypt? That's where we put Joseph. That's where we sold Joseph." But Jacob doesn't know that, and so he go back one verse. Sorry. Jacob goes, "Why are you just looking at each other? I just told you where the food is. I'm hungry. Let's do something about it." Okay, now go to the next one. All right, he said, "Behold, I've heard there's grain for sale. Go down and buy some for us, that we may live and not die." Right? So he says again, "Behold, I've heard that there is grain for sale in Egypt. Go down and buy some grain that we might die." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt, but Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with his brothers, for he feared that harm might happen to him. So I just want to kind of paint this picture a little bit. Famine reached Canaan. Jacob says, "Hey, go to Egypt." The brothers are kind of reluctant about that. They're kind of scared to do that because of what they did to Joseph back in the day. They're like, "Man, he might be dead by now, but what if he's alive? We run into him. What if he finds out, Dad finds out what we did to him?" And then we see the pain of a father. You see, Benjamin was the full brother of Joseph. He was the other brother given to him by his wife Rachel, and he held on. Here we see 20 years later, the hurt of losing Joseph, it changed his entire life. It's still governing how he makes his decisions on a day-to-day basis. He still feels that hurt. He lives in fear of losing Benjamin just like he lost Joseph. He holds on to that hurt and pain. But reluctantly, the 10 brothers go. So Joseph, he's set up. He's governor of the land, and we are 2 years into this famine. So Joseph is 20 years in the making. The last time he saw his brothers, he was sitting at the bottom of a pit that his brothers threw him in and then sold him into slavery. And won't you know it, who shows up at the door? His brothers, right? So as his brothers show up, they come back and forth a couple times. That's the part we don't have time to get into today, but we're going to focus on this one part. So let me just continue painting this picture. Here's Joseph. He's set up. He's in charge of selling all the food to all the people that he's trying to preserve this famine for. Remember, they had 7 years of bountiful harvest and then 7 years of famine. We're 2 years into the famine. People are coming to him. He's kind of managing all of Pharaoh's dealings with all of the things, right? And then here come in the brothers. But the brothers don't recognize him. They don't know who he is. I mean, it's been 20 years. Last time they saw him, he was 17 years old. And here he is, probably dressed as a very royal Egyptian. And, you know, Joseph, it's like he doesn't want him to know he's there yet. He's probably kind of distraught and wow, these are my brothers, they're here. He's feeling all of that hurt and all that pain. So he actually starts speaking through an interpreter to further hide his identity of who he is. And, you know, he starts giving them some tests. They start going back and forth. He's speaking through this interpreter. You know, I actually ran into a friend that at Walmart this week that I knew from him about 11, 12 years ago. I call that my before Christ period, right? And me and him were running around in a motorcycle club together and you know, doing the party scene and stuff like that. And so I walked by him and I saw who he was and I was like, hey man, what's going on? It's good to see you, kind of dabbed him up. And I kept going. He actually came back and found me in the store. He was like, man, I know you, but I can't put it together. Like, who are you again? Because I don't recognize you. I know you from somewhere, but I don't recognize you. And so I told him who I was, and he was like, man, that's crazy. You look so different now. Like, what are you doing? And we kind of caught up there for a minute. And, you know, oftentimes people won't recognize who you are, not only because what you have done, but because God has taken you to a different place. So when you get confronted from your past and all of a sudden you look different, you become unrecognizable, right? So right here, he's face to face with his brothers who sold him into slavery years ago. And what's he do? He puts them in shackles and he has them down on their knees. And they're sitting there, they're shackled, still speaking through the interpreter, right? And here we go, they start feeling this guilt and conviction like, man, I probably deserve this. They're speaking amongst each other. They don't think that Joseph can understand what they're saying. And this is what they're saying here in this moment. They said to one another, surely we are being punished because of our brother. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded with us for his life, but we would not listen. That's why this distress has come on us. Can you imagine being Joseph? And you understand what they're saying. And they're saying that with no knowledge that you were there. And they're recognizing that they might be in this because of what they had done, right? But then Reuben replied, didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy? But you wouldn't listen to me. Now we must give an accounting for his blood. So Reuben, he's the oldest brother. I don't know if you guys remember back from week one. Reuben was the oldest brother, and originally the brothers wanted to kill him. And Reuben was like, no, hang on. As the wiser, better looking, smarter, you know, big brother that you should listen to because he knows I'm an oldest brother. If you can't tell, I got some siblings sitting over here. So. So Reuben's sitting there and he's telling this and hearing this, I can't imagine, once again, being an older brother, that this is the first time the 9 other brothers have heard Reuben complain about this. I'm sure over 20 years, this has had to have come up in conflict, right? Like, they're trying to keep this secret from their father. Can you imagine the trust issues between these brothers? The back and forth, the secrets? The awkward moments where Joseph might come up in conversation and all their brothers are just kind of staring at each other. And Reuben's like, I told you guys. Told you guys. They had to grow up watching the hurt of losing his favorite son and watching how that had a toll on their father's life. Can you imagine the heartache and the pain that must have felt like? You know, you see this moment kind of come, and they're in a moment of fear. They realize that they're bound, they're shackled up, but they have a moment of fear, and they have a moment of guilt, and the fear plus guilt leads them to a state of brokenness. What will Joseph do? What would you do? What would you do if I have to put myself in the picture and kind of change the situation a little bit. And I stand there and I imagine me standing in front of, let's say, another man who decided that it was okay for him to put hands on my daughter. And I have the power to put my hands around his neck and to do whatever I wish. And I know I'm not the only one in the room that I could come up with some pretty creative ways to cause some pain, right? Someone that wanted to harm my daughter, that wanted to harm someone that I loved, or the years of hurt and the buildup of all those feelings of taking the innocence of someone that I love. Or maybe you imagine someone that instead of your childhood being filled with movies and being filled with playful moments of love, they're filled with hurtful memories, painful memories of growing up with either a mother or a father who weren't always there, or maybe they were there and that might have been the issue. And now you have that moment to enact your revenge. Or maybe you imagine standing there in front of a spouse that was supposed to love you, that promised to remain faithful, but option 2 looked better. And now you're standing there. It's the person that, or the event, that whatever it was, that whenever it comes up, you get a sick feeling in the stomach. And by the way, if it's the person that you're thinking of right now as I'm talking. It's the person that's in your head that makes you sick to your stomach, that you start feeling nauseous, that whenever the topic of the person or the thing that it is, whenever it comes up, you just stonewall the conversation. You don't want to talk about it. You want to bury it. You want to send it back. You know, they say that time heals all wounds, but everybody in here knows that is garbage. Time hasn't healed a daggum thing, right? It just turns an open wound into scars, right? So that's where Joseph is right here in the moment. He has the power to crush them, absolutely crush them. This is the second most powerful man in Egypt. With a simple look to his guards, he could have them beheaded in front of him. Like that's the level of power that this guy has at this moment. But we see when he sees his brothers, it triggers the trauma of the day that he looked up from that pit and he saw the people that were supposed to love him and have his back. But now the roles are reversed. And it's the brothers in the pit. And you know what? The roles have reversed. And I bet in this moment, he's probably remembering that dream that God gave him of his brothers bowing down. And he's like, man, this is it. This is what God told me. And he's justifying the things in his mind. He's toiling with what to do. He's like, man, this is exactly the moment that God told me about. That they're gonna bow down before me. I'm gonna reveal myself. It's gonna be this huge, huge moment, and I'm gonna get all of my revenge, and they're gonna feel everything that they did against me. Now, listen up. This is for you, and I'm preaching straight to you this morning because right now, I don't believe for a second that there's nobody in this room that you're not standing in front of something that hurt you, that you're not standing in front of something that happened years ago that you've buried in the past, that is haunting you still to this day. There's some things that probably happened to you that never should have, or maybe there's some things that should have happened to you or for you that never did. You and Joseph have the same decision to make. Now, what was that thing that y'all were supposed to do when I point at you? What's that phrase? God was with him. God was with Joseph. And God gives him a new interpretation of the event. You see, it's in this moment that the brothers are in front of him, and he realizes that God actually put him in this position not so he could stand and show off in front of them, not so that he can reenact his revenge, but so he can serve them. You see, there was a purpose for everything that had happened in Joseph's life. And Joseph realizes that in this moment. And right here, we're going to flip over if you're following along. Now we're going to be in 45, verse 1. As you flip, I'm going to grab some water. Actually, I'm going to grab some tea. He's sitting there. He's in front of his brothers. And he couldn't control himself anymore. It got to a point where he's remembering everything that happened to him, and he just couldn't take it anymore. So he goes and he sends everybody out. He's like, everybody except me and these brothers right here, these people that have hurt me. Everybody get out. No one stayed with him when Joseph makes his decision. Let's go to the next verse. He wept aloud so that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. This isn't a pretty cry, right? This isn't one of those cries that you just kind of have the tear that slowly wells up and runs down your cheeks. This isn't the, man, that Toy Story movie was good, I got something in my eye. This isn't that moment. This is the cry in the shower that you don't tell people about. This is the cry that maybe only your spouse knows about, that your best friend, maybe a sister, knows about. It's that kind of overwhelming thing that takes over Joseph's body at this point, where the culmination of all this hurt, 20 years in the making of hurt and pain, just overwhelms him. Let's go to the next verse. And he says, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? And the brothers froze. They couldn't say a word. They probably realized how precarious their situation really was. They thought they were just being, taken captive in Egypt, but no. It's actually kind of worse than that. They're being taken captive by the very guy that they sold into slavery. I bet those moments that they were experiencing felt like hours before Joseph responded. So he says again, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But the brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. Next verse. So Joseph said to his brothers, come near to me. He says, come close. Come here. You see, nature says that we have to push the pain away. Nature says that you need to put it on the back burner. Nature says that you need to dig a hole deep enough and put that thing in there so it can't come back. But Joseph doesn't do that. He says, come near to me. You see, you can't interpret what God is trying to do in your life from a distance. God says you have to pull it close. Joseph says you have to pull it close, right? He invites the relationship. But notice, he reclaimed the bond. I am your brother, Joseph. But then he points the finger. He identifies the pain, and he confronts the hurt. He says, I'm Joseph, and I'm your brother, whom you sold into slavery. He is acknowledging that happened. This isn't a 20-year secret anymore you can keep from your dad. It's not a 20-year secret that you can keep from your spouse. It's not a 20-year secret that you can keep from your kids. It's not a 20-year secret that you can keep lying to yourself about. He calls it out and he confronts it. He says, here it is. Now, listen, verse 5, chapter 45. He says, now, don't be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me here before you to preserve life. Now, I don't know about you, but that verse, man, it didn't really make sense to me when I was preparing for this, because it kind of felt like a contradiction. You sold me. He said, you sold me, and it was wrong. You let me down. You're the reason that I am here where I am today. You're the reason I was sent to Egypt. I would be back at home with my father if it weren't for you. But then there's that whole second part here, and he says, for God sent me. Well, which one is it, Joseph? Like, did they sell you or did God send you? Which one is it? It sounds like he's talking out of both sides of his mouth. And notice the construct. Notice the phrasing. I think it's really important that this word right here, it doesn't say you sold me, but God sent me. No. It's not a but God sent me. It's not, well, I know this happened to you, so God sent me, right? No. He says for. You see, the second phrase here is a continuation of the first. You sold me, for God sent me. Lord, will you help me preach this verse right now? Because there's something in here that you guys need to hear, okay? There's something in here that you need to hear from Lord. He sits here and he says, don't be angry with yourselves. Don't punish yourselves anymore. And don't you cower in my presence. Don't torment yourself anymore, because now I have a new interpretation of it. I have a new interpretation of the event. It's been a lot of years since you pushed me in that pit. It's been a lot of years since my dad walked out the door. It's been a lot of years since that person who was supposed to love me and cherish me hurt me in unimaginable, unspeakable ways. It's been a lot of years since you walked out of that marriage. It's been a lot of years since you lied about me. It's been a lot of years since you stole something from me. It's been a lot of years. Am I preaching? Listen, guys, it's not the event. It's not the event. It's not the event that determines the outcome. It's the interpretation of the event that determines the outcome. The first thought is the event. You sold me. The second thought is the interpretation of the event. For God sent me. Which one are you going to live in? The event, you sold me, or the interpretation, God sent me? You know, maybe a better question for you. I'm gonna let that hang. My tea's gone. Maybe the better question is, who's your interpreter? Who's your interpreter? Are you interpreting your God through your life? Or are you interpreting your life through your God? Because it can't be both. It can't. You see, I thought the fire came to kill me, but the fire that was sent that I thought was there to kill me was actually there to refine me so that I can be refined and walk into the purposes that God has to give me, right? You need a reinterpretation of your events. You need God to help you interpret your situation. Because right now, your trials and your hurt that are there before you, that you've been interpreting has been wrong. And if I do the interpreting, and if you do the interpreting, we'll get it wrong every time. And some of us have the wrong interpreter. You see, you're interpreting your past through your present. Go ahead, Willem. You're interpreting your purpose through your pain, your lives through one event, and your future through your flaws. You know, I got an opportunity, this was quite a while ago now. I got to go to Uganda, and this was like 2012, I believe. And while I was there, I got voluntold to preach literally in the middle of the service. They're like, all right, now this guy's going to bring the message. I'm like, all right. So there's people from all over, and so I actually had two different interpreters that I was having to speak through. And there was another man that was there that he was a pastor, and I had asked him, I was like, man, you got any tips for this? And he was like, let's just pray you get a good interpreter, man. Like, let's just pray that they're good. Because I was thinking about that, and I asked him later, I was like, what'd you mean by that? And it was kind of too soon, too late. I kind of was stuck in that moment. And he goes, well, I've had the opportunity to speak in a few different countries, and there's something that if you ever get a bad interpreter, you'll know, because you'll be standing there and you'll say something, like a little phrase, and then next thing you know, they said 3 sentences, and you're like, or maybe it's the opposite. You're sitting here and you say a couple sentences and you're on fire, and they're like, what he said? Like they leave some things out. And you see, that's the same thing that if we have the wrong interpreter happens with us. See, some of you are letting the enemy add in some things that God never said. Some of you are listening to the wrong interpretations, and they're telling you lies about the situation, and you don't have the perspective to see what the event really was, and you need a new interpreter. Or maybe it's the other way. Maybe just like when we were just looking at when it says, you sold me, maybe the enemy's leaving some things out, and you're stuck right there. There's nothing, there's nothing after that comma for God sent me. You don't ever even get to see that because the enemy is keeping that from you, and you get stuck in just the event that happened to you in your past, in the you sold me, and you are living in that, and he's handcuffing you and never allowing you to move forward into freedom with him. The way I see it is there's 2 groups of people in the room. Just like Woody and Jesse, you have Joseph and his brothers. And now here today, there's 2 people in the room. One person identifies with Joseph. They were hurt by something or someone, and you've allowed that hurt to sit in your heart and leave you handcuffed. And you know, the thing about being handcuffed is, you know, I can still kind of function, right? My hands are handcuffed together. I can still drink water. I could probably even still pick up a small kid. Like, I can sit here and I can type and I can work and I can do the thing. But you know, when you're handcuffed, you know what happens when you finally have that moment and you go to try and worship, and this is what you want to do. But you're allowing the event to handcuff you in your past. Eventually, you won't even realize that you're being handcuffed. You become hardened. You start developing a victim mentality. You become so comfortable blaming other people and blaming things that happen to you and using it as an excuse to stay comfortable and to stay stagnant where you are, but never experiencing true joy, true freedom. You realize that forgiveness would actually take some effort on your part, and it takes some action on your part, and the enemy makes holding on to it so easy and so enticing. And I know you're sitting, you're like, Aaron, but if I forgive them, they'll just get away with it. What they did for me, what they did to me, I can't just let that go. They'll get away with it. What's going to happen to them? What about them? Guys, they're already living like they got away with it. And you holding on to it is keeping you chained, and they're living rent-free in your head, keeping you right where you are while they're out living their life. Let God deal with them. I'm talking about you. Living with that unforgiveness in your heart will eventually become bitterness. You know, bitterness, it hardens you. Bitterness, when it sits in there for years, it's like drinking poison hoping the other person dies. It's silly. Give it to God and let him handle it. Maybe you're the other person. Maybe you're like the brothers. Maybe you've hurt someone in your past, like Joseph was hurt by his brothers. Maybe they never forgave you. And now you feel handcuffed to that, and you feel like someone else is holding the key. And I'll be honest with you, maybe they never forgive you. Maybe they won't. But you can still find peace, and you can still find freedom by coming and asking who has the master key, who can free you from that. And when you find forgiveness from God, you are set free. You know, I know this really well because not only have I've been both of these people, but, you know, Brandy and I were these two people in our first year of marriage. I was the one that did the hurting. I was the brothers. And I had an addiction that felt like a betrayal from my promises to Brandy that I made to her when we got married. I needed forgiveness, and I felt hopeless, guilty, and unworthy of love, unworthy to be married to that wonderful woman. Brandy probably identified more with Joseph. She was hurt, and for a while, she couldn't see past it. It was something that we both needed freedom from, because if we had let that just sit there, then we would have never moved forward. Our marriage would have stayed stagnant, or worse, she had the power, just like Joseph did, to go pulling the plug, calling it quits, move on. She could have ended our story with divorce. But Brandy realized, and I realized, we would never move forward to something better if she kept us handcuffed to that event. Not just me, us. Kept us handcuffed to that event. If she didn't let God give a new interpretation of the event, then our story would have ended much, much too early. But guess what? She did forgive me. And I will have to say, like, Brandy, when she was reading through my notes, she was like, "You're making you sound like you're the only bad guy in this story. She loves me. She wants to protect me." She's like, "I had some faults too. Like, it wasn't just you." And man, thank you. You love me so much. You love me so well. And I will say, our marriage is more like a cast iron skillet now. So it's well seasoned, tough as nails. It only gets better with age. So because we let God interpret our events in our marriage, now we are on the other side of it. And we see that just like Joseph, he said that God sent me before you to preserve life. Now Brandy and I's marriage acts as a testimony to not other people in the congregation, but as an example to my siblings, as an example to the people that I work with at the fire station. It gives them an example to possibly be able to preserve life. And God will do the same thing to your event. Whatever that is, the event that you happen, if you let God reinterpret the event, then guess what? He's going to use that event to continue to interpret, to preserve life for the people that are around you. You see, I know what you're sitting there thinking. You're like, "Aaron, you don't know my story. That might have worked out for you, and that's awesome. Good for you, dude. Good for you, but you don't know my story. You don't know my hurt because you weren't there. You weren't there when I was abused every single day as a child, and now I live with the scars all over my body from it. You weren't there when I was taken advantage of, when something was taken from me that never should have from a person that never should have taken it. You weren't there when I was bullied every single day and I had no friends and I was left alone. You weren't there when I was overseas and I was on one side of a scope and there was somebody else on the other and I had to pull that trigger because that's what I was called to do in that moment. You weren't there. You weren't there when I lay alone in my bed, unable to find the strength within myself to even get up, trapped under the weight of my own depression. You're right. I wasn't there. But Jesus was. And just like you, He had years invested in friendships and relationships, and he was betrayed. He was rejected, he was denied, and he was abused, and ultimately put up on a cross by the same people that called him Savior. And he models a better way for me and for you. From that position on the cross, right there in that moment, he says in Luke 23, verse 34, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Even in his darkest hour, Jesus chose forgiveness. And he has a message for you. He says, I know your pain. I was there when it happened to you. Just like I was there for Joseph in prison. Just like I was there for Joseph in Potiphar's house. Just like I was there for Joseph when he was sold into slavery and from the bottom of a pit that his brothers put him there. He said, I'm there with you the same as I was for there, because I am the same God that I was back then. I am the same God that I was when Jesus was put on that cross, and then 3 days later he was resurrected from the dead. And I'm the same God that has been with you for every one of those events that you've had happen to you in your life. And now, because of his sacrifice on the cross, you have the power to reveal Christ's glory to others by offering them the same forgiveness that he gave you. You see, you can let your past either be a stepping stone or a tombstone. I don't know how long you've been living with unforgiveness. The sickness of unforgiveness. Maybe it's been a year. Maybe it's been 5 years. Maybe it's been a decade. Maybe it's been 20 years, just like Joseph. Maybe it's been 60 years. I don't know. But isn't it long enough? Hasn't it been long enough that you've been living with this same sickness inside of you, that you've left buried in your backyard, that you've pushed off on the back burner, that something that has been haunting you for this long, that you think this time is just going to heal this thing? Isn't it time for you to deal with it? So your next step is a simple one. Take a step. Can everybody just stand with me for just a moment? I want you to take a step into the future towards Christ, and watch how he can reinterpret your event. He can reinterpret it right now. There's going to be some people up front here in just a second. Not yet. There's going to be some people up front that are ready to receive you, ready to sit here and pray with you in agreement. They're going to pray for you in whatever your situation is. If you want to tell them, that's fine. If you don't want to tell them, it doesn't matter for them. They're just here to pray for you and to be right there beside you. Today is the day that you can free yourself. So I'm going to ask you again. Here on the count of 3, I want you to take that step. The altar is open. Today is the day that you can free yourself. Listen, don't believe that the lie that the enemy is trying to tell you right now. The lie that you're probably having a hard time with right now is my pain that I feel now is just punishment for what I did in the past. And that's not true. That's a lie that the devil tells you to keep you in shackles. You know what the difference between guilt and shame are? You see, shame is, guilt is meant to draw you to God. We see that in Scripture. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am bad. When you have been living with this unforgiveness and bitterness in your heart, or you keep allowing yourself to be handcuffed by something that maybe you did or something that was done to you, that shame begins to take on your identity. And you seem to think that you are the event that happened to you, or you are the thing that you did. And all that does is keep you shackled. Don't wait. Don't wait any longer. Lord, will you please give these people a courage to move forward when we say 3. Give them the courage to step forward and deal with the hurt that's in their life. That first step can either be a stepping stone, but if you hold on to it and you sit in your seat, that stepping stone gets stood up and becomes your tombstone. That unforgiveness causes separation from God, and you will never be able to walk into the purposes that he has for you if you continue holding on to it. On the count of 3, we're going to take a step forward. The band's going to get ready to play. 1, 2, 3.
It was my cross you bore, so I could